Welcome back to Trala. I'm just kidding. Yo, welcome back to Trala, my favorite violin app. We're gonna learn how to do octaves, how to chop, and how to play my song, Get It. Let's go. This is my song, Get It. Get It is one of my favorite songs to perform live. It doesn't matter if people have heard it before. Every single time I just start playing and I get to that hook and everyone in the crowd starts dancing and get it, hey, And it's really cool because it didn't have lyrics. It didn't have any vocals or anything like that for the longest time. And I wrote the whole song. And when we wrote the chorus, when I wrote the hook, I was just sitting there and I'm like, listen to the drums. And I was doing that and chopping along with the snare. And I'm like, oh, hey, we should layer those just to give it a little extra something. And originally that's all it was just me trying to add a little to the snare. And then I just ended up doing those octaves, and I'm like, whoo, that sounds dope. And then I finished the whole song and we're sitting there listening to it. And I bring it home and I'm listening, and I'm like, it's 99% there, but there's something missing. And I don't sing, so I never put any vocals into a song before. And so I just pressed record and was just hyping myself up. And I'm just like, get it, hey, get it. And then we just pitched down that vocal really low to make it sound all cool. And that was the song, that was it. We released it and people go nuts at every show. And they're all dancing and singing and I just, it's a good time. I love this song. The first part of Get It starts like this. When you're playing in a group, you're playing in a band, or you're jamming with your friends or whatever, playing violin's pretty nice because it cuts through and it can be heard above everything else. You can be in the lead, and there's really no issues hearing what the violin's doing. But there's sometimes when you don't want to be in the lead and you want to be in the background. And I think pizzicato really helps with that. It's a really good moment to use pizzicato, which essentially is just plucking your strings instead of using your bow. There are a couple of ways you can do this. I think more traditionally, people hold their violin up just like you're going to play, and then they switch their bow over and free their index finger so they can pluck. Now let's take a look at how that works. If you hold your bow like this, I think it's a little easier with your thumb underneath the frog, because then essentially all you do is push the bow back so that your thumb can come around and make a fist, and then you take your index finger, which is now free, and you can pluck. Let's look at that again. You have your thumb under the frog, you push that thumb around, and then you have your index finger free to pluck. Now, if you hold your bow like I do, I have my thumb in the middle here, between the horsehair and the actual wood of the bow. So if you have your finger there, then you're gonna have to kind of maneuver it a little bit more like that with the other fingers. But either way, your index finger is free to pluck, and you're good to go. One thing I like to do as well sometimes, especially if I'm not going to go from pizzicato straight to arco immediately, is to hold it like this. Now you can see if you have your violin up and you have to go from plucking straight back to arco, from pizz to arco really quickly, you should probably have your violin like this and do that method. So you go from plucking straight back and you're ready to go. You're already up here, you're ready to play. But if you're not doing that and you're just doing a pizzicato part and you have a little bit of a rest before you come back in with the bow, then I would do this. It's kind of fun sometimes. I just hold it like this, like it's a guitar essentially. I forget I'm playing violin and just pretend I'm playing guitar. And I put the shoulder rest over here on my side, and I kind of put my elbow just on the edge of the violin, hold it like that, and support it with my left hand. And then I use my thumb and my middle finger. And I actually don't pluck with the index finger if I have it down like this. I use the index finger as a little bow holder. And some people, if you're sitting down at a gig, you can just put your bow on your leg if you want to. I like to have it on my finger like this, because then if I need to play, I can just whip it out like that, really quickly. I'm plucking, I can just, So that's what I like to do. But it might be a little easier to have your bow on your legs. So I use my thumb on one string and my middle finger. So for get it, I would go like this. So the open D is the only thing I do with the thumb, is hit the open D string, and then I do the other notes with my middle finger. The A and B flat, I do those both with my middle finger on the A string. So let's look at that again. We want to make sure that the open D string, that's all you're doing. It's always open. I'll play it this way. And then open A, and then make sure you have a low B, a B flat. Not this. That'd be a different song. That's a little too happy for get it. Get it's supposed to be a little darker. You want a B flat there. So make sure the B flat is going to be basically right next to your open string. Now I'm holding my violin down so that you can see it. You don't want to play that way. You want to make sure you're playing it, with good posture, strong, confident, your violin up, and then now one thing you can do for extra support, if you're going to be holding your violin like this while you do pizz, use your thumb and you can put it just right here. And it gives a little support. Now sometimes you may not want to do that, and I know, the oils from your fingers, if your hands aren't clean, can get on here, and I don't know, it can create a messy situation with the rosin that's coming off. So maybe you don't want to do that, and that's fine too. You can just have only your index finger and go. Or if you need a little support, you can put your thumb down here on the fingerboard, on the edge. Right there on the edge. And that might have some extra support that way, and that'll help you to keep your fingers in the right place and not to slip. Let's practice the pizzicato section of Get It. We're going to play open D, open A, and that low first finger for B flat. Let's play those three notes in order, giving each one a quarter note beat. 1, 2, 3, open D. Again. Just those three. Low 1. Yeah. One more time. Awesome. Now what we do next is very simple. It's only the same three notes the whole time, but we just switch the order of the B flat and the A. Instead of doing D, A, B flat, let's do D, B flat, A. D, B flat, A. D, B flat, A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't forget that low 1. All right, let's play the whole phrase. Once you have the phrase down, that's all you do for the entire section. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch it up. Yeah. And switch it. Switch. Switch. Once you have that practiced, it'll be easy to memorize it, and you can just have 2 parts in a row that are the exact same. And then you just know the 3rd time through, it's very simple. And you just repeat that, and then you're good to go with the entire pizzicato section. Yo, good job. You just learned pizzicato, and not only did you learn pizzicato that looks like this, which you would expect to see, but you also learned pizzicato that looks like this, like a guitar, which I think is really cool and very unorthodox, and you probably won't see that much. So if you're doing that at home, people are gonna be like, you're really cool, because it is cool and it's really fun. All right, congratulations, let's keep going. Today we're gonna learn one of my favorite things to do on violin. It's not very melodic and it's not very pretty, and it's a purely percussive element. It's called chopping. It sounds like this. And that's it. Now, why would you ever want to make that noise on your violin? Well, I'll show you why. Basically, to me, it kind of sounds like a snare drum, so that's what I use it for. I use it for a purely percussive thing, just to keep time, keep a rhythm going. If I play this part of Get It that doesn't have any of that in it, no chopping at all, this is what it sounds like. Okay, it's kind of boring. Now if I just add a chop, it sounds like this. Just adding in that chop makes such a difference. And when you're hanging out with your friends, you're jamming, if you add a chop in, let's say that you're playing in you want to play a G, and you just go, it just adds such a cool thing to it. So you could be improvising and you start doing that in the middle of your solo. People are going to be very impressed. I guarantee you some of your favorite violinists don't know how to chop. So this is going to be a skill that you can show off and you can enjoy having something different, very, very different to do when you're playing. The first thing you want to do is to put your left hand on the strings. Now don't push them down like you're playing a note, because then they'll ring like that. But also, you don't want them just wide open, because then again, they ring. So just let them rest very lightly on the strings. So that's what you get. Not much ringing, not much resonance on the violin strings, but just a bunch of noise. And then with your right hand, just go. You're not going to make much noise. And what's going to happen is you're probably going to end up pushing the bow into the violin is kind of what you're doing. And it doesn't really make any noise. What actually makes the noise is doing this. I know that sounds like trash, but what you're going to do is you're doing that very quickly. That's basically what a chop is. So instead of going and using up this much of my bow, I'm using this much of my bow, and it sounds like that. You're basically making noise for a split second. And then tighter. So I'm going to do it for a longer bow to a shorter bow so you can see the difference. You go shorter, shorter. And it's a really quick attack. You just let it bounce for a quick second. So practice that. And remember, you don't want to just push your bow onto it. Your bow needs to move so that it grabs the strings. Very, very good. Now you don't want to use your whole arm. You don't need to do that. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Just hold it an inch or two above and just do that. Now you hear how that chop sounds different than the other one? It's just different strings. That'll sound higher up here and it'll sound lower down here. So you can choose wherever you're most comfortable and do that. And that's essentially what chopping is. And then when you're playing, just choose it, choose it basically whenever you feel, just to make it more rhythmic, just to keep the rhythm, keep the beat going. And if you're soloing, it's really, really cool. I like to do it a lot, as you can tell, because I'm doing it in my song, just to keep the beat. And I like to do it along with the snare drum. So if you're playing a hip hop song like I do, and you hear that snare drum, then you're like, okay. Just do it with the snare. And then you can play the chords behind it. And it makes such a difference. Let's practice chopping. Mute your strings with your left hand. We're going to do every other quarter note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, rest. Really quick. Make sure you're grabbing those strings, quick attack. Don't just let it bounce with no noise. Make sure you're making some noise. If you're not making any noise at all and it's just bouncing, really just give it a go. So, and then make it shorter. There we go. In the middle of a song, you're gonna have to use a string and actually play notes between your chops. So let's play an open D, and you have to switch with your left hand. Open D, mute. So it'll be awesome. This is a really tough skill to master. So if you're not getting it, don't get discouraged. Just keep practicing. You're going to be great. And making sure, more importantly than anything else, if you're not making any noise and you just can't get it, just use the bow to make a scratching sound, and then make the bow a little quicker, a little shorter, and a little shorter, and you'll nail it. Good job. You're learning how to chop, and chopping is one of the hardest things to do on the violin. That's why you don't see it a lot. So don't get discouraged if you're not making noise. It took me a long time to figure out how to do this. Don't forget, if you're not making noise though, you just use your whole bow. Just go for it and make like a scratching sound, and then make your bow shorter and shorter and shorter till it's a quick grab, quick bounce, and that'll end up sounding like chopping, and you'll be killing it. It's not gonna be that difficult as long as you practice. Here's the D minor scale. When I started learning scales, I learned all the major scales first. So naturally, I knew the D major scale long before I knew the D minor scale. So when I went to learn the minor scales, I was trying to play the D minor scale, and I kept messing up because I kept wanting to play the notes of the D major scale that I knew so well. So I think it's very important that we can hear, see, and feel the difference between the two scales. I'm going to play the D major scale with an F sharp and a C sharp. That sounds great. Now the difference is that when you play a D minor scale, you don't have an F sharp, you don't have a C sharp, and you add in a B flat. The B goes to a B flat. So it sounds like this. Sounds crazy, right? Really funky. I like it. It's very different from the D major scale. So I'm going to try that one more time, and I'm going to take the notes twice as long and really pay attention to where I'm putting my fingers, that the low second fingers are no longer high, and that first finger on the A is low. So you have D, E, low 2 for the F, then over to the A, low 1, low 2, and then D, back down, low 1, over to the G, low 2, now one thing that'll help a little bit is if you're looking at the finger placements next to the other fingers. So on the D string, you have open D, and then your 1 for an E, then the F goes right next to it, right next to that first finger, and then a G, and then open A, and then that low 1 right next to it, and then a normal C, and then a D. So your first finger on the D string and your second finger on the D string will be right next to each other. They're neighbors. Right there. And then you continue up. And then the next finger that's right next to the note before it is the B flat. And then you just continue with C and D. So I'm going to play the whole D minor scale one more time. Yeah. Now one thing you're going to want to really focus on as well aren't just the notes that you're playing, but also how you're holding your violin, how you're holding your bow. So are you hunched over? That's not going to help anybody. Make sure you're standing up nice and tall. You know, give those shoulders a little bit of a roll if you need to. And put your violin up and make sure, this is something I used to do a lot. I was really bad about my left hand. My left hand would be like this. And I would try and play, I couldn't even move my hand. So make sure that your wrist is down. You don't want it all the way out like this because then you can't even reach any notes. Just naturally, just kind of straight down, hanging like that. And that way, that gives you all the movement in the world. It's going to feel natural. There's not going to be any strain on it. And you're not going to have your wrist bumping into your violin, messing things up. So first things first, make sure you have that going on. Make sure it feels natural and feels good and looks good like this, straight up and down. And then with your bow hand, just make sure you got that pinky to give it that balance. That's what gives it the balance. You have your thumb in the middle. Some people like to put their thumb on the bottom. That's totally fine. I put my thumb in the middle, but you know, you've got your first finger up here, your pinky down here, and then the others just kind of sit there, and that controls all the balance between your thumb, your pinky, and your index finger. So make sure that you're ready with that, and you have your both hands just need to be natural. It's just natural. You don't want to, you know, I've seen some people try to play like that. You don't want to do that. That'd be horrible. So just make sure both hands are placed like they should be and feel natural and that they're not hurting. They don't feel awkward and anything like that. And you're standing tall, and your arm, because you're over on the D string, you're not on the E, so your arm's not going to be over here next to your side. It's going to be up a little bit. And then perfect. Let's practice the D minor scale. We're going to take it 4 notes at a time. So we're going to start with D, E, F, and G. We're going to start with a down bow, and we're going to do 2 notes per bow. So that'll be D and E, and then F and G going up. Now, if you've practiced your major scales, you're going to want to do that high 2 on the D string. Make sure you're doing a low 2 for that F. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, low 2, one more time, one more time. Now you notice my right elbow's up, my left elbow's away from my body, but not like I'm trying to fly, not sky high. We want them just to be natural, but if you're on the D string, your elbow should be away from your body a little bit. E string, it might be closer, but D string, you want it to be kind of out like that. And yeah, just make sure that your wrist, you know the posture, make sure your wrist is is natural and going up and down, and your left arm is nice and comfortable and not too, you don't want to be tight and rigid. Let's do those first 4 notes again, and then we'll move on. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. Now we're going to move on to the next 4 notes. That'll be A, B flat, don't forget that low 1, A, B flat, C, and then D. And again, don't forget we're doing 2 slurred notes per bow. So that'll be A and B flat, C and D coming up. So we're going to start on A. 1, 2, low 1, 4. Again. Low 1. Yeah. Awesome. Now we're going to put those 2 together to play the full scale, starting on an open D. Now don't forget your low 2 on the D string and your low 1 on the A string. 1, 2, 3, open D. Over to the A string. Again, D. A. Yeah. 2 more times. Low 2. Low 1. Hey, and that's the D minor scale. Way to go. Congratulations, you just learned the D minor scale. Now don't go off playing the wrong notes and making the same mistakes I used to make when I was learning the minor scales. You want to make sure you have that low second finger on both the D and A string and that low first finger on the A string so you can hit that B flat. Otherwise, just make sure you've got posture, make sure you're holding your violin right, your bow right, and kill it. All right. This is the chorus of Get It. Let's learn the octaves for the chorus of Get It. An octave is when you're playing one note and you're playing the same note higher, an octave higher. An octave will be 8 notes. So if you're playing in a scale, the 8th note above any given note will be the same note, but called an octave higher. Let me explain that. Here's a D minor scale, starts on D. So if I play the scale, that's the that's also a D. So that's a D, and this is a D. So it's an octave. So we can play those together. You hear how important intonation is. Sometimes vibrato can help with that. But it's very important that you don't have it too high either, or too low. Just right. And then we're going to do the same thing with the open A and a 3rd finger on the E string. The thing about the chorus of Get It is that we're going from doing the octaves to chopping. So let's just do a full note with the open D and the 3rd finger on the A, and then chop. So So you notice I can't just hold down that third finger and also chop. I have to kind of mute the strings. So I have to move my left hand over and mute the strings so I can get that chop. Let's play the actual notes and the actual rhythm. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now make sure you're muting those. Now you don't have to completely take your third finger off and use all your fingers to mute it. You could just have this. You're not using your pinky, so you can mute it with your pinky. Put your pinky in front of all the strings, or at least the strings you're gonna be chopping on, and go. And then over. Now don't forget that this is a background thing. This isn't normally something you do as a soloist or like, if you're in the forefront, this is more of a background thing, especially if you're in Get It. You're playing that and you hear the lyrics, get it, A. You're gonna be playing with the beat. You're kind of in the background supporting those vocals that are up there. And you can back up pop artists or hip hop artists or whatever, doing that, country, whatever it is you wanna do. And it's really cool and it gives you like something completely different to do rather than just playing lead lines and being in the front all the time. And that's what's cool about violin. It's very versatile. You can do anything with it. Let's practice octaves. Let's start off with just the D. So we'll have a third finger D on the A string and we'll have an open D on the D string. Now make sure you're in tune with each other first. That sounds good. Let's check it with the open D. Sounds good. We're gonna do the rhythm that we play and Get It, but let's not worry about the chops just yet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm just leaving open space there. That's where the chops will be, but don't worry about that quite yet. Let's do that one more time and make sure that your intonation is good. So basically just making sure you're in tune. If you're a little too high, this sounds pretty bad. That sounds all right. If it's a little too low, too bad. And since you can move your finger, your third finger, then you want to tune that note to the open D. So whenever you're playing, obviously you want to tune your violin first, then you'll just find your open D, and slide your third finger up till it's in tune. Sounds great. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. Now let's move over to the A, which is going to be nice and easy because all we do is just move over to an open A and move that third finger from the A string to the E string. So instead of, move it right over. Now you see how I was a little out of tune there? You got to make sure you check that. Maybe my A was out of tune. All right, let's do the A now. Open A, same third finger, except on the E string. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that sounds so good. Let's do that a couple more times and then we'll put them together. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before we add the D and A together, let's add in the chops to the A we just played. So instead of those spaces, let's add in the chops. And don't forget, you don't want to just push it in, which it'll give it a little bit of that chop sound, but really you want to give it a quick little, a nice little, like you're grabbing the strings really quick. All right, let's try adding that in there. 1, 2, A4. Oh, that's really good. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one mistake I just made that you would have heard is I chopped, but then I tried to use too much bow coming up and it kind of grabbed the string. So you want to make sure you're careful of that. That up bow is going to be really nice and short. All right, now let's add, oh my God. All right, now let's add in the chops and let's do both D and A, making sure you're in tune first, of course, which if you're in tune, then you can tune to your open string and you're good to go. All right, here we go. D, 2, 3, 4. Over to the A. A. Awesome. Now remember, you want to make sure you have good posture. It's going to be really hard to do it if you're like that. You want to be nice and tall, your violin up and your arm up, or if you're over to the E string, a little further down, and you're going to kill it. You've learned a really cool way to use both octaves and chops. It's really sick. So make sure that you're doing the string crossings at the right time and watching your intonation. And then instead of probably chopping and muting with your whole hand, don't forget you can leave down your third finger and just mute with your pinky if you want to. Let's keep going. You learned my tune, get it? You learned how to chop, you learned octaves, you learned the D minor scale. Good job, you learned a ton and it's really fun. And a lot of what we learned, especially octaves and chopping, isn't typical for a lot of violinists. And pizzicato like this? Let's go. Keep going. Thanks for coming back. See you soon.